What if the rise and fall of empires hinged not on swords or armies, but on the ability to vanish into plain sight? Throughout history, the art of disguise has been a silent yet powerful force, shaping destinies and rewriting the rules of power. From ancient spies who used makeup and costumes to infiltrate enemy lines, to modern-day undercover agents who rely on cutting-edge technology, the ability to blend in has always been a weapon of choice for those who operate in the shadows. But how did this craft evolve, and what secrets lie behind the masks, wigs, and false identities of history's most cunning operatives? In this journey, we'll uncover the hidden world of ancient disguises, exploring how spies and agents used everything from theatrical makeup to elaborate costumes to outwit their enemies. We'll dive into the psychology of secret identities, why they work, how they've been perfected over centuries, and why they still captivate us today. From the hushed halls of ancient courts to the covert missions of modern espionage, the art of disguise has always been about more than just looking the part. It's about becoming someone else entirely. So, what can we learn from these masters of deception, and how do their techniques still influence our world? Join us as we peel back the layers of history to reveal the intrigue, the ingenuity, and the timeless relevance of the ancient art of disguise. The art of disguise is as old as civilization itself, with its roots deeply embedded in the rituals and strategies of ancient societies. Long before the cloak and dagger tales of modern espionage, cultures like the Egyptians and Mesopotamians were already mastering the craft of deception. One of the earliest uses of disguise wasn't for spying or warfare, but for something far more spiritual: religious ceremonies. In these rituals, masks played a central role, allowing individuals to embody gods, spirits, or ancestors. These masks weren't just symbolic, they were transformative, blurring the line between the human and the divine. Over time, this sacred practice took on a more earthly purpose. What began as a spiritual tool soon became a weapon in the hands of those seeking power or protection. Take, for example, the story of an Egyptian spy during the reign of Pharaoh Ramses II. This unnamed operative adopted the guise of a humble merchant, blending seamlessly into the bustling marketplace of an enemy city. Under the cover of his disguise, he gathered intelligence on troop movements and fortifications, all while selling wares and haggling over prices. His success wasn't just due to his acting skills, it was a testament to how deeply disguise had been woven into the fabric of ancient strategy. This early example shows us that the principles of espionage we associate with modern spycraft, blending in, gathering information, and staying unnoticed, were already being refined thousands of years ago. But disguise wasn't just about blending in, it was also about standing out in the right way. In Mesopotamia, rulers and officials often used elaborate costumes to project power and authority, creating an aura of invincibility. These early forms of deception weren't just about hiding identities, they were about crafting new ones, tailored to achieve specific goals. Whether it was a priest donning a mask to channel a deity or a spy posing as a trader to infiltrate an enemy camp, disguise was a tool of transformation, both literal and symbolic. These ancient practices laid the groundwork for what would become a cornerstone of espionage and intrigue. The techniques developed by these early civilizations using costumes, masks, and personas would evolve over centuries, becoming more sophisticated and nuanced. From the sacred to the strategic, disguise became a versatile instrument, shaping the way societies approached both conflict and ceremony. And as we'll see, these early innovations were just the beginning of a long and fascinating history of secret identities and covert operations. Disguises have long been more than just a tool for deception. They've been a weapon of war. In ancient times, the ability to blend in, mislead, or infiltrate could turn the tide of entire battles and sometimes even empires. Take the legendary Trojan Horse, for example. This wasn't just a clever trick, it was a masterstroke of psychological warfare. The Greeks, after years of stalemate outside the walls of Troy, realized brute force alone wouldn't win the day. So they crafted an enormous wooden horse, left it as a supposed offering, and hid their best soldiers inside. When the Trojans brought the horse within their walls, they unknowingly delivered their own downfall. This wasn't just a disguise, it was a calculated move that exploited trust and curiosity, reshaping the course of one of history's most famous conflicts. But the Trojan horse wasn't the only example of disguise tipping the scales in warfare. Greek soldiers often shed their armor and weapons, dressing as civilians to slip behind enemy lines. These undercover operatives gathered critical intelligence, mapping out defenses, sabotaging supplies, and sowing confusion. Alexander the Great, one of history's most brilliant military minds, relied heavily on spies who mastered the art of blending in. His agents would infiltrate enemy camps, posing as merchants, travelers, or even deserters, gathering secrets that gave Alexander a decisive edge. These tactics didn't just win battles, they reshaped empires. What's fascinating is how these ancient strategies reveal the psychological power of disguise. It wasn't just about hiding identities, it was about manipulating perceptions. By appearing harmless or trustworthy, soldiers and spies could exploit the expectations of their enemies. This psychological edge often proved more effective than sheer numbers or brute strength. It's a reminder that warfare has always been as much about the mind as it has been about the sword. And as we'll see, this interplay between disguise and psychology would only grow more intricate as civilizations evolved. The human mind is a fascinating web of shortcuts and assumptions, and disguises exploit this beautifully. At their core, disguises work because our brains are wired to take mental shortcuts, something psychologists call cognitive biases. These biases help us process information quickly, but they also make us susceptible to deception. For example, the confirmation bias leads us to see what we expect to see. If someone looks and acts like a merchant, we're far less likely to question whether they might actually be a spy. Ancient spies were masters at playing these mental tricks, using disguises to blend seamlessly into their surroundings and manipulate perceptions. Think about it. If you saw someone dressed as a priest, would you immediately suspect them of being a spy? Probably not. That's because our brains rely on visual cues to categorize people and situations. Ancient spies understood this instinctively. They knew that a well-crafted disguise wasn't just about changing clothes. It was about embodying a role so convincingly that it bypassed suspicion entirely. This psychological insight gave them an edge, allowing them to move undetected in enemy territory or gather intelligence without raising alarms. Modern psychology sheds even more light on why disguises are so effective. Studies show that people are more likely to trust someone who fits an expected social role, even if that trust is misplaced. This phenomenon, known as social role theory, explains how disguises exploit our tendency to make snap judgments based on appearances. Ancient spies didn't just wear costumes, they became the characters they were portraying, leveraging the power of perception to their advantage. But disguises didn't stop at clothing. They also involved altering behavior, speech, and even body language. A spy might adopt the accent of a region, mimic local customs, or carry tools associated with their assumed profession. These details reinforced the illusion, making it nearly impossible for observers to detect the deception. It's a lesson in psychology as much as it is in espionage. The more convincingly you can align with someone's expectations, the less likely they are to question your true intentions. This understanding of human psychology wasn't just a tool for ancient spies, it became the foundation of their craft. By mastering the art of disguise, they turn the weaknesses of the human mind into their greatest strength. And as we'll see next, this psychological edge wasn't just about blending in. It was also about creating opportunities to gather information, manipulate events, and ultimately change the course of history. The art of disguise in ancient espionage wasn't just about slipping into a new identity. It was a masterclass in resourcefulness. With no access to modern tools or technology, spies relied on everyday materials to transform their appearances. Natural dyes made from plants like henna or crushed berries could darken hair or skin, while simple wigs crafted from animal hair or plant fibers allowed them to change hairstyles in an instant. Prosthetics, though rudimentary by today's standards, were ingeniously designed using clay, wax, or even leather to alter facial features. A spy might bulk up their cheeks with padding or reshape their nose to look entirely unrecognizable. These techniques weren't just about deception, they were survival tools in a world where being caught could mean certain death. Take the Roman Empire, for example. Spies often posed as slaves to infiltrate enemy households or gatherings. Why? Because slaves were everywhere, yet invisible to those in power. A Roman spy could dye their hair, don a simple tunic, and blend seamlessly into the background, listening in on conversations that could shift the tide of politics or war. The disguise wasn't just physical, it was psychological. A slave's posture, movements, and even the way they held their gaze had to be perfected. One wrong gesture could betray their true identity. But a convincing disguise went beyond appearance. Language and accents were the final pieces of the puzzle. A spy had to sound the part, whether that meant adopting the local dialect or mimicking the speech patterns of a specific social class. In ancient Greece, for instance, spies from rival city-states would study the nuances of their target's language, mastering regional slang or idioms to avoid suspicion. A single mispronounced word could unravel hours, if not days, of careful preparation. It wasn't enough to look the part, you had to live it, breathe it, and embody it completely. This combination of makeup, costuming, and linguistic mastery reveals just how sophisticated ancient espionage truly was. These weren't just tricks, they were calculated strategies born out of necessity and ingenuity. And while the tools may have been simple, the results were anything but proving that even in the ancient world, the art of disguise was a powerful weapon in the shadows of history. Now, let's turn our attention to one of the most subtle yet powerful tools in the spy's arsenal: language. In the world of espionage, mastering a foreign tongue wasn't just about fluency, it was about survival. A single mispronounced word or an out-of-place accent could unravel even the most carefully crafted disguise. For ancient spies, language wasn't just a skill, it was a lifeline, a way to blend seamlessly into enemy territory and gather critical intelligence without raising suspicion. Take, for example, the spies of China's Warring States period. These operatives didn't just learn the languages of rival states, they immersed themselves in the local dialects, idioms, and even the cultural quirks that shaped how people spoke. A spy from the state of Qin sent into the rival state of Chu would have to sound like they'd lived in Chu their entire life. Any slip in tone, phrasing, or rhythm could expose them, and the consequences were often deadly. It wasn't enough to know the words, they had to become the people they were pretending to be, but language went beyond mere vocabulary. Accents and speech patterns were just as critical. A spy's ability to mimic regional inflections or adopt the cadence of a local merchant could mean the difference between blending in and standing out. Imagine a spy infiltrating a bustling market. Every word, every pause, every rise and fall of their voice had to align perfectly with the environment. Even the smallest deviation could draw unwanted attention, turning a covert operation into a disaster. This level of linguistic mastery wasn't just about short-term deception either. Some spies maintained their false identities for years, living among their targets as trusted neighbors or even advisors. In these cases, language became a cornerstone of their long-term strategy. They didn't just speak the language, they breathed it, allowing their false personas to grow roots in the community. Over time, their secret identities became so convincing that even those closest to them might never suspect the truth. Language, then, was more than a tool. It was a bridge between worlds, a way for spies to navigate the delicate balance of trust and betrayal. And as we'll see in the next section, the art of maintaining these secret identities required more than just linguistic skill. It demanded an understanding of human psychology, a mastery of social cues, and an unwavering commitment to the role they were playing. Because in the end, the greatest disguise wasn't just about looking or sounding the part, it was about being the part down to the very core. Imagine waking up every day not as yourself, but as someone entirely different, a merchant, a scholar, or even a beggar. For ancient spies, this wasn't just a role to play, it was a full-time commitment. Crafting a secret identity wasn't as simple as changing clothes or adopting a new name. It required building an entire life from scratch, complete with a backstory so convincing that even the smallest details could mean the difference between success and disaster. Take, for instance, the Byzantine spy who posed as a merchant for years. To everyone around him, he was a trader of rare goods, traveling between cities and building a reputation for honesty and reliability. But beneath the surface, every conversation, every transaction was a carefully calculated move to gather intelligence. He didn't just pretend to be a merchant, he became one, memorizing trade routes, market prices, and even the personal histories of his supposed colleagues. One wrong move, one slip of the tongue, and his cover could unravel, putting his life and his mission at risk. Living a double life like this wasn't just physically exhausting, it was mentally draining. Imagine the constant pressure of remembering every detail of your fabricated life. Where were you born? Who were your parents? What was your childhood like? These weren't just questions you answered once, they were stories you had to live and breathe day in and day out. For ancient spies, the psychological toll of maintaining a secret identity could be as challenging as the physical dangers they faced. But what made these disguises so effective wasn't just the skill of the spy, it was the tools and techniques they used to blend in seamlessly. From forged documents to carefully crafted accessories, ancient espionage was as much about the art of deception as it was about the craft of disguise. And as we'll see next, some of these tools were surprisingly sophisticated, even by modern standards. Ancient spies were masters of ingenuity, relying on tools and gadgets that were as clever as they were effective. These weren't just simple tricks, they were carefully crafted devices designed to outwit enemies and protect secrets. Take, for example, the hollowed-out scrolls used by Persian spies. These seemingly ordinary documents could hide tiny messages or even maps inside their wooden rods, making them nearly impossible to detect unless you knew exactly where to look. It's a perfect example of how ancient spies used everyday objects in extraordinary ways, but the creativity didn't stop there. Hidden compartments were a staple of the trade, whether sewn into clothing, built into furniture, or concealed in jewelry. A spy might carry a dagger disguised as a hairpin or a poison vial cleverly hidden in the heel of a sandal. These were tools designed not just for stealth, but for survival. And then there were the coded messages, cryptic symbols, invisible inks, and even messages written in lemon juice that would only appear when heated. These methods were so advanced that they laid the groundwork for modern encryption techniques. One of the most fascinating aspects of these ancient gadgets is how ahead of their time they were. The miniature weapons, like tiny crossbows or blades hidden in rings, were engineering marvels that combined precision and practicality. They weren't just tools of deception, they were symbols of the spy's ability to adapt and innovate under pressure. And while these gadgets were impressive, they were just one piece of a much larger puzzle. The true brilliance of ancient espionage often lay in the people who wielded them. This leads us to a group often overlooked in the history of spying: women. From queens to courtesans, women played a pivotal role in ancient espionage, using their wits and social positions to gather intelligence that shaped the course of empires. Their stories are a testament to the power of strategy and subtlety, proving that sometimes the most effective tools of the trade weren't gadgets at all, but the sharp minds and resourcefulness of those who used them. From the shadows of history emerged stories of women who played pivotal roles in ancient espionage, their contributions often overshadowed by their male counterparts. Yet, these forgotten spies wielded influence that shaped empires and shifted the tides of war. Take Cleopatra, for instance. Beyond her famed allure and political savvy, she relied on a network of female informants who gathered critical intelligence from Rome and beyond. Their ability to move unnoticed in male-dominated spaces gave them a unique edge, blending into the background while extracting secrets that would alter the course of history. In the Han Dynasty, women were equally indispensable. Female spies, often posing as concubines or servants, infiltrated enemy courts with ease. Their roles required not just cunning but also a deep understanding of human psychology, as they manipulated conversations and relationships to extract valuable information. One particularly striking example comes from ancient Greece, where a courtesan named Phryne used her position to gather intelligence for Athens. Her access to powerful men in social settings allowed her to overhear plans and strategies which she relayed to her handlers. Women like Phryne didn't just participate in espionage, they mastered it, leveraging societal expectations to their advantage. But with such power came profound ethical dilemmas. Spies, regardless of gender, often faced moral crossroads. Should they betray trust for the greater good? Could the ends ever justify the means? These questions were especially complex for women, who often had to navigate personal relationships while fulfilling their missions. The story of espionage isn't just one of tactics and triumphs. It's also a narrative of sacrifice and the heavy cost of loyalty to a cause. As we explore these layers, we begin to see how the role of women in ancient spy networks wasn't just about gathering intelligence. It was about redefining what it meant to wield power in a world that rarely acknowledged their strength. The practice of espionage in ancient times wasn't just about gathering secrets, it was a moral minefield. Deception, betrayal, and manipulation were tools of the trade. But how did societies grapple with the ethics of these actions? Was spying seen as a necessary evil, or was it condemned as dishonorable? These questions weren't just philosophical debates, they were central to how empires and kingdoms defined their values. Take ancient Rome, for example. The Roman Senate often found itself torn over the use of spies. On one hand, espionage was a critical tool for maintaining power and protecting the state. Spies infiltrated enemy territories, gathered intelligence, and even spread disinformation to destabilize rivals. But on the other hand, many senators viewed these tactics as fundamentally at odds with Roman ideals of honor and virtue. The very act of lying or betraying trust was seen as unworthy of a Roman citizen. Yet, despite these moral reservations, espionage persisted because it worked. The survival of the empire often depended on it, but Rome wasn't alone in this ethical dilemma. In ancient China, the use of spies was deeply embedded in military strategy, thanks in part to Sun Tzu's The Art of War, which famously stated, "All warfare is based on deception." Here, espionage wasn't just tolerated, it was celebrated as a form of intellectual mastery. The Chinese viewed spies as skilled strategists who outsmarted their enemies, often without shedding a drop of blood. Yet, even in this context, there were limits. Spies who acted purely for personal gain or betrayed their own people were seen as dishonorable, a stark reminder that even in a culture that embraced deception, there were lines that couldn't be crossed. What's fascinating is how these ethical debates shaped the course of history. Espionage didn't just protect empires, it built them. Consider the Persian Empire, which relied on a vast network of informants to maintain control over its territories. Without these covert operations, it's unlikely that such a sprawling empire could have survived the constant threats of rebellion and invasion. Similarly, the Byzantine Empire used espionage to outmaneuver its enemies, turning deception into an art form that kept its borders secure for centuries. So, was ancient espionage right or wrong? The answer depends on who you ask. For some, it was a necessary tool for survival in a world where power was always at stake. For others, it was a betrayal of the very ideals that defined their civilization. What's clear is that espionage wasn't just a shadowy side note in history. It was a driving force that shaped the rise and fall of empires, leaving behind a legacy of moral complexity that still resonates today. Espionage wasn't just a tool for survival, it was a cornerstone of empire building. Ancient empires, from Rome to China, relied on intelligence gathering not only to expand their borders but also to maintain control over vast territories. These empires understood that knowledge was power, and they wielded it with precision to outmaneuver rivals and secure their dominance. Take the Roman Empire, for example. Rome's extensive network of informants and spies, known as speculators, played a critical role in monitoring political unrest, uncovering plots, and ensuring loyalty across its sprawling provinces. Without this web of intelligence, Rome's ability to govern such a vast and diverse empire would have been far more precarious. But it wasn't just about control, espionage also fueled expansion. The Mongol Empire, under leaders like Genghis Khan, built one of history's most sophisticated spy networks. Their scouts and messengers, known as Yam, were not only tasked with delivering messages but also with gathering critical intelligence on enemy movements, terrain, and political alliances. This information allowed the Mongols to strike with unmatched speed and precision, conquering territories from Asia to Europe. Their success wasn't just due to brute force, it was their mastery of espionage that gave them the edge. Espionage also played a subtle yet vital role in diplomacy. Ancient empires often relied on spies to negotiate treaties, forge alliances, and even sow discord among rival factions. In China, during the Warring States period, spies were frequently sent to neighboring states to gather intelligence and manipulate political outcomes. These undercover agents weren't just observers, they were active participants in shaping the course of history. What's fascinating is how these ancient practices laid the groundwork for modern intelligence operations. The strategies used by empires like Rome and the Mongols, surveillance, misinformation, and covert diplomacy, are still relevant today, proving that the art of espionage is as timeless as it is powerful. As we move forward, we'll explore how these tactics evolved and became intertwined with the world of diplomacy, shaping the delicate balance of power between nations. In the shadowy world of ancient diplomacy, spies were more than just covert operatives. They were master manipulators of trust and information. Diplomatic missions often served as the perfect cover for espionage, where envoys and ambassadors walked a fine line between representing their rulers and secretly gathering intelligence. The stakes were high and the rewards even higher. Imagine a Byzantine envoy traveling to a foreign court, ostensibly to negotiate peace or trade agreements. But beneath the surface, this envoy might be tasked with uncovering military strategies, mapping out defenses, or even sowing discord among rival factions. The delicate balance between trust and deception was the lifeblood of such missions. One wrong move could shatter alliances, but the right information could tip the scales of power. Take, for example, the Byzantine Empire, renowned for its sophisticated use of espionage. Their envoys were often trained not just in diplomacy but also in the art of subterfuge. They would embed themselves in foreign courts, earning the trust of kings and ministers while secretly sending coded messages back to Constantinople. These double agents played a crucial role in shaping the empire's foreign policy, often turning the tide of negotiations in their favor. The very people who were meant to foster peace were also the ones quietly undermining their hosts. It was a game of chess played on a global scale, where every move had consequences far beyond the negotiating table. But espionage wasn't confined to political alliances or trade deals. It also played a significant role in religious conflicts, where faith and power often collided. As the Byzantine Empire navigated its relationships with both Christian and Islamic states, spies became instrumental in understanding and sometimes manipulating religious dynamics. The information they gathered could be used to sway public opinion, influence religious leaders, or even incite rebellions. In this context, espionage wasn't just about gaining an edge. It was about survival in a world where faith could be as divisive as territory. The transition from diplomatic espionage to religious intrigue reveals just how deeply interconnected these realms were, and how the ancient world relied on the unseen hands of spies to shape its destiny. Espionage wasn't just a tool of kings and empires. It also became a weapon in the hands of religious factions, shaping the course of history in profound and often unexpected ways. During times of religious conflict, spies weren't just gathering intelligence. They were fighting for the survival of their faith, their communities, and their very way of life. Take, for instance, the Roman occupation of Judea in the 1st century. Here, Jewish resistance fighters often relied on covert agents to gather information about Roman movements and plans. These spies moved in the shadows, blending into the everyday life of occupied cities, passing critical details to their leaders. The stakes were unimaginably high. Betrayal could mean death, but success could alter the course of a rebellion. Religious espionage reached new heights during the Crusades, a period where faith and warfare were deeply intertwined. Both Christian and Muslim forces employed spies to infiltrate enemy camps, often disguising themselves as pilgrims, merchants, or even deserters. These agents didn't just collect military intelligence, they also spread disinformation, sowing confusion and weakening their enemies from within. Imagine a Christian knight dressed in the robes of a humble traveler, slipping unnoticed into a Muslim stronghold to map its defenses. Or a Muslim scholar posing as a convert, embedding himself within a Christian court to uncover plans for the next crusade. These were the high-stakes games of deception that shaped the outcomes of holy wars. But espionage in religious conflicts wasn't limited to the battlefield. It also played a role in the rise of early Christianity. As the faith spread across the Roman Empire, its followers often faced persecution. To survive, early Christians used coded symbols and secret meeting places, effectively creating networks of underground communication. Some even infiltrated Roman households as servants or advisors, gathering information about upcoming crackdowns while spreading their beliefs in subtle, covert ways. This duality of faith and secrecy was a hallmark of their struggle. And then there's the fascinating intersection of espionage and mythology. Ancient stories often reflect the realities of their time, and tales of spies and secret identities abound in religious texts and folklore. The biblical story of Rahab, for example, features a woman who hides Israelite spies within her home, playing a pivotal role in their mission. These narratives remind us that espionage wasn't just a practical tool, it was also a source of inspiration, a way to explore themes of loyalty, betrayal, and divine intervention. As we move from history into the realm of literature and mythology, the line between fact and fiction begins to blur. Stories of spies and secret identities became metaphors for the human condition, reflecting the eternal struggle between light and shadow, truth and deception. Whether in the pages of ancient texts or the whispered plans of holy warriors, espionage remained a powerful force, shaping not only the world we live in but also the stories we tell about it. Long before modern spycraft, the art of espionage and disguise was already weaving its way through the tapestry of ancient literature and mythology. These stories, passed down through generations, reveal how deeply rooted the concepts of secrecy and subterfuge were in human culture. Take Homer's Odyssey, for instance, where Odysseus himself becomes a master of disguise. He uses his cunning to infiltrate Troy, famously hiding inside the Trojan Horse, a ruse that ultimately leads to the city's downfall. But Odysseus isn't the only one. There's Sinon, the Trojan spy, who plays a pivotal role in selling the lie of the wooden horse to the Trojans, convincing them it's a gift rather than a trap. His ability to manipulate trust underscores how deception was seen as both a skill and a necessity in ancient warfare. Moving beyond Greece, the Mahabharata, one of India's great epics, offers another fascinating glimpse into ancient espionage. In this sprawling saga, spies are not only warriors but also storytellers, diplomats, and even ascetics. The Kauravas and Pandavas, the two warring factions, rely heavily on spies to gather intelligence and outmaneuver each other. The Pandavas, for example, send their trusted spy Sahadeva into enemy territory, disguised as a cowherd to gather critical information. These tales highlight how espionage wasn't just about brute force, it was about strategy, patience, and the ability to blend into the background, skills that were as valuable then as they are now. What's particularly striking about these ancient depictions is how they reflect the cultural importance of espionage. In a world where information was scarce and trust was fragile, the ability to deceive or uncover secrets could mean the difference between victory and defeat. These stories weren't just entertainment, they were lessons in strategy, morality, and the complexities of human nature. They show us that espionage wasn't just a tool of war, it was a way of life, deeply embedded in the fabric of ancient societies. But espionage wasn't limited to the battlefield. As trade routes expanded and commerce flourished, the need for secrecy and intelligence grew in the world of business as well. Merchants and traders often relied on spies to protect their interests, whether it was uncovering rival trade secrets or safeguarding their own. The Silk Road, for example, wasn't just a path for goods, it was also a conduit for information, where spies and informants played a crucial role in shaping the fortunes of empires and merchants alike. This blending of espionage and commerce reminds us that the art of disguise and deception has always been as much about survival as it has been about power. The ancient world of trade and commerce wasn't just about exchanging goods, it was a battlefield of wits where espionage played a crucial role in securing economic dominance. Imagine a bustling marketplace in ancient Tyre or Samarkand, where merchants didn't just sell their wares but also gathered secrets to outmaneuver their rivals. Spies were the unsung heroes or villains of this high-stakes game, using cunning tactics to steal trade secrets, sabotage competitors, and tip the scales of wealth in their favor. One of the most fascinating examples comes from the Phoenicians, the master traders of the ancient Mediterranean. These seafaring merchants weren't just skilled negotiators, they were also skilled infiltrators. Phoenician traders would often embed themselves in foreign ports, blending in seamlessly with local cultures while quietly gathering intelligence on trade routes, pricing strategies, and even the latest technological innovations. This information gave them a significant edge, allowing them to dominate markets and outpace their competitors. But the art of economic espionage wasn't limited to the Mediterranean. Along the Silk Road, merchant spies were just as vital. These networks of trade routes stretching from China to Europe were teeming with rival caravans, each vying for control of lucrative markets. Spies disguised as merchants would travel with caravans, gathering information on the movements of rival traders, the locations of hidden oases, and even the political alliances that could make or break a deal. Sometimes they'd go a step further, spreading false rumors to mislead competitors or sabotaging their goods to create delays. This shadowy world of trade espionage wasn't just about immediate profits, it also laid the groundwork for innovation. By stealing or acquiring knowledge from rival cultures, merchants and spies helped spread new technologies and ideas across vast distances. For instance, the secrets of silk production, once closely guarded by China, eventually made their way to the West, thanks in part to the efforts of those willing to bend the rules of trade. As we shift our focus from commerce to science, it's clear that the same tactics used to gain economic advantages also played a role in the race for innovation. Just as spies infiltrated markets to steal trade secrets, they also infiltrated workshops and laboratories to uncover the latest scientific breakthroughs. The line between economic espionage and intellectual theft was often blurred, and the stakes were just as high. Spies weren't just masters of deception, they were also agents of innovation. In the ancient world, espionage played a surprising role in the spread of scientific knowledge and technological advancements. Imagine a time when the secrets of a civilization's greatest achievement, like silk production, metallurgy, or even medicine, were guarded as fiercely as treasure. For ambitious empires, stealing these secrets became a high-stakes game, one where spies were the key players. Take the story of silk, for example. For centuries, the Chinese held a monopoly on silk production, a closely guarded secret that gave them immense economic power. But around 2,000 years ago, spies from neighboring kingdoms managed to smuggle silkworm eggs and mulberry seeds out of China, effectively cracking the code of this luxurious fabric. This theft didn't just shift the balance of trade, it reshaped entire economies, spreading silk-making techniques across Asia and eventually into Europe. But it wasn't just about silk. Ancient spies were behind the theft of countless other technologies. Think of metallurgical techniques, astronomical knowledge, or even architectural secrets. These stolen ideas didn't just enrich the thieves, they accelerated progress across civilizations, often leading to cultural exchanges that might not have happened otherwise. And let's not forget the role of espionage in art and culture. Spies weren't just after scientific secrets, they also targeted artistic techniques and cultural practices. From pottery designs to musical instruments, the movement of ideas through espionage helped shape the artistic landscapes of ancient societies. It's a fascinating reminder that even in the shadows, spies were weaving connections that would endure for centuries. This interplay between espionage and innovation shows us just how deeply intertwined secrecy and progress were in the ancient world. It wasn't just about power or warfare, it was about the relentless pursuit of knowledge even when it had to be stolen. Art has always been more than just a visual feast, it's been a canvas for secrets, a medium for hidden conversations, and a tool for those who needed to communicate without speaking. In the ancient world, espionage wasn't just about shadowy figures in dark alleys. It often played out in the open, disguised within the beauty of art and culture. Take, for example, the intricate hieroglyphs of ancient Egypt. These weren't just decorative symbols or straightforward records of history. Many of them were cleverly designed to carry hidden meanings, accessible only to those who knew how to decode them. A seemingly ordinary depiction of a pharaoh's victory might also contain a covert message about troop movements or alliances, meant to inform a select few while leaving others none the wiser. But it wasn't just hieroglyphs that served as vehicles for secrecy. Sculptures, too, became a playground for spies and informants. In ancient Greece, statues were sometimes embedded with subtle symbols or coded inscriptions, acting as a form of silent communication between allies. Imagine walking through a bustling marketplace where a statue of a god or goddess held not just religious significance but also a hidden directive for an undercover operative. These works of art were more than just cultural treasures, they were tools of subterfuge, blending seamlessly into everyday life while carrying messages that could shift the balance of power. Even in personal relationships, espionage found its way into art. Consider the ancient practice of using portraits or jewelry to convey coded messages between lovers or allies. A ring with a specific engraving, a painting with a particular arrangement of flowers, these could all serve as signals, invisible to the untrained eye but crystal clear to those in the know. It's a reminder that espionage wasn't always about grand conspiracies or high-stakes political intrigue. Sometimes it was woven into the fabric of daily life, hidden in plain sight. As we move forward, we'll see how these ancient practices laid the groundwork for more personal forms of espionage, where relationships themselves became a battlefield of secrets and deception. The art of disguise wasn't just about physical transformations, it was about using every available tool, even the most beautiful ones, to achieve one's goals. And in the ancient world, art was perhaps the most elegant disguise of all. Imagine being invited into the inner circle of a royal court, trusted with secrets that could topple empires, only to discover that the charming confidant by your side was an impostor, a spy sent to unravel your life from within. This was the reality for many throughout history, where espionage wasn't just about stealing documents or intercepting messages. It was about infiltrating the most intimate spaces of human connection. From royal courts to noble families, spies mastered the art of blending into personal relationships, exploiting trust, and bending emotions to their will. One of the most infamous examples comes from ancient Rome, where a spy named Decimus Junius Brutus Albinus played a pivotal role in the downfall of Cleopatra's ally, Mark Antony. Disguised as a loyal friend, Brutus gained Antony's trust, only to betray him during the tumultuous power struggles of the time. But it wasn't just about political gain. This betrayal cut deep on an emotional level. Antony had considered Brutus a brother, a confidant, and the psychological toll of such a betrayal was devastating. Cleopatra, too, fell victim to the web of deception, her trust shattered by those who had once feigned loyalty. These betrayals weren't just personal tragedies, they reshaped the course of history. The emotional impact of such deception often lingered long after the spy had vanished, leaving behind a trail of paranoia and mistrust. In royal courts where alliances were fragile and power was everything, the discovery of a spy could unravel entire dynasties. Noble families, too, weren't immune. A single infiltrator could sow discord, turning family members against each other, all while gathering intelligence to fuel their master's agenda. But espionage wasn't confined to the glittering halls of royalty. It also played a critical role in rebellions and uprisings, where the stakes were just as high, if not higher. Spies embedded themselves within rebel groups, posing as passionate revolutionaries while secretly feeding information to the ruling powers. They exploited the camaraderie and trust forged in the heat of rebellion, using it as a weapon to dismantle movements from within. The psychological warfare of espionage was just as potent as the physical battles fought on the front lines. Consider the role of spies during the English Civil War, where infiltrators worked tirelessly to undermine both the royalists and the parliamentarians. These double agents manipulated personal relationships, spreading rumors and sowing doubt to weaken their enemies. The emotional scars left by these betrayals often outlasted the wars themselves, leaving survivors questioning every relationship, every whisper, every glance. Espionage in personal relationships was a double-edged sword. It wielded immense power, but it also carried a profound human cost. The spies who mastered this art were not just skilled actors. They were architects of chaos, capable of turning love into suspicion and trust into fear. And as we'll see next, this intricate dance of deception didn't just shape the fate of individuals, it altered the course of entire nations. One of the most fascinating aspects of ancient espionage is how it played a pivotal role in rebellions and uprisings, often deciding the fate of entire movements. Think about the Spartacus revolt in ancient Rome, where thousands of enslaved gladiators and laborers rose up against their oppressors. While Spartacus and his followers were incredibly resourceful, the Roman Republic had a secret weapon: spies. Roman intelligence agents infiltrated rebel camps, gathering critical information about their plans, strengths, and weaknesses. This intelligence allowed Roman generals to outmaneuver the rebels, ultimately crushing the uprising. It wasn't just brute force that secured Rome's victory. It was the quiet, unseen work of spies. But spies didn't always serve the powerful. In some cases, they worked to support rebellions from within. Take the Yellow Turban Rebellion in ancient China, for example. This massive peasant uprising against the Han Dynasty relied heavily on covert networks to organize and communicate. Rebel spies infiltrated government offices, spreading disinformation and sabotaging efforts to quell the rebellion. Their work was so effective that it prolonged the conflict for years, highlighting how intelligence could be a double-edged sword in the hands of the oppressed. What's striking about these examples is how espionage often tipped the scales of power. Whether it was Roman spies undermining Spartacus or rebel agents outsmarting imperial forces, the ability to gather and act on intelligence made all the difference. These ancient spies weren't just gathering information, they were shaping history. And speaking of shaping history, espionage didn't only play a role in rebellions. Natural disasters like floods or famines often created chaos that spies exploited to their advantage. In times of crisis, the lines between friend and foe blurred, and intelligence operatives used the confusion to gather critical information or sow discord. This intersection of espionage and disaster reveals just how adaptable and resourceful these ancient agents were, always finding ways to turn even the most dire situations into opportunities. Natural disasters have always been moments of chaos and vulnerability, and throughout history, spies have seized these opportunities to further their agendas. When societies are reeling from earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, or floods, the usual order breaks down, creating a perfect environment for covert operations. One striking example comes from the aftermath of the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in the year 79. While the Roman Empire focused on rescue efforts and rebuilding, spies from rival factions infiltrated the chaos, gathering intelligence on military movements, economic resources, and political weaknesses. The disaster not only devastated Pompeii and Herculaneum, but also left the region's defenses exposed, making it easier for operatives to move undetected. Espionage during such crises wasn't just about gathering information, it was also about creating instability. Rival powers often saw natural disasters as a chance to weaken their enemies by spreading rumors, sabotaging recovery efforts, or even inciting rebellion among the displaced and desperate. The opportunistic nature of espionage shines through in these moments, revealing how intelligence operatives have long understood the value of exploiting chaos for strategic gain. As we shift our focus from land-based disasters to the unpredictable world of the seas, the role of espionage in maritime exploration becomes equally fascinating. The oceans were not just pathways for trade and discovery, they were also arenas of secrecy and intrigue. Ships carried not only goods but also secrets, and spies often traveled under the guise of merchants, sailors, or even explorers. The next chapter of this story takes us into the high seas, where the stakes were just as high and the methods just as cunning. The high seas have always been a battlefield of wits as much as a clash of ships, and in the ancient world, spies played a crucial role in tipping the scales of naval dominance. Picture this: rival powers vying for control of lucrative trade routes, their ships laden with spices, gold, and silk. But beneath the waves of competition, a quieter war was being waged, one of intelligence and subterfuge. Ancient maritime powers like the Phoenicians, known for their mastery of the seas, didn't just rely on skilled sailors or sturdy ships. They deployed spies to gather critical information about rival coastlines, naval defenses, and trade networks. These covert agents would infiltrate enemy ports, often posing as merchants or sailors, to map out territories and identify weaknesses. Their intelligence was invaluable, shaping the strategies of naval warfare and ensuring their fleets could strike with precision. One particularly striking example comes from the Phoenicians, who were not only legendary traders but also masters of espionage. Their spies ventured into uncharted waters, mapping the coastlines of rival powers with astonishing accuracy. These detailed charts gave their navies a strategic edge, allowing them to navigate hostile waters and launch surprise attacks. But espionage wasn't just about warfare, it also played a key role in securing trade monopolies. By learning the routes and habits of their competitors, the Phoenicians could outmaneuver them, ensuring their dominance in the Mediterranean. This blend of exploration and espionage laid the groundwork for what we now recognize as modern intelligence-gathering techniques. As we shift our focus from the waves to the world of ancient medicine, it's fascinating to see how the same principles of secrecy and observation applied. Just as spies gathered intelligence on rival powers, ancient physicians relied on covert methods to uncover the healing secrets of distant cultures. This intersection of espionage and medicine reveals yet another layer of how ancient societies used stealth and cunning to gain an edge, not just in war, but in the pursuit of knowledge and survival. Spies weren't just masters of deception and secrets, they were also thieves of knowledge. And one of the most valuable treasures they sought was medical expertise. In the ancient world, where healthcare was often a closely guarded secret, espionage played a surprising role in spreading medical advancements across cultures. Imagine a Greek spy disguised as a merchant slipping into the bustling streets of ancient Egypt. His mission: to steal the sacred medical texts that Egyptian physicians had perfected over centuries. These texts contained everything from herbal remedies to surgical techniques, knowledge that could give his homeland a significant advantage. And it wasn't just the Greeks. Many ancient civilizations sent agents to infiltrate rival societies, often risking their lives to bring back medical secrets that could save or improve countless lives. The impact of these thefts was profound. When Greek spies smuggled Egyptian medical texts back to their homeland, it didn't just benefit their own people, it reshaped ancient healthcare as a whole. Greek physicians like Hippocrates, often called the father of medicine, were influenced by these stolen insights, blending them with their own practices to create a more comprehensive understanding of the human body. This exchange of knowledge, though achieved through espionage, laid the groundwork for medical advancements that would echo through history, but it wasn't just about healing. The theft of medical knowledge also had strategic implications. In a world where armies marched for months and diseases could decimate troops faster than any battle, understanding medicine was as crucial as mastering the sword. Now, let's shift our focus to another unexpected arena where espionage played a role: ancient sports and games. Just as spies infiltrated rival cultures to steal medical knowledge, they also sought to uncover the secrets behind their competitors' athletic prowess. From the gladiatorial games of Rome to the Olympic competitions of Greece, understanding the training methods, diets, and techniques of rival athletes could mean the difference between victory and defeat. And sometimes the stakes were even higher than glory. They were about survival. In the next section, we'll uncover how espionage shaped the world of ancient sports, revealing a hidden battlefield where strategy and cunning were just as important as strength and speed. Imagine the roar of the crowd, the clash of competitors, and the glory of victory. Ancient athletic events like the Olympic Games were more than just displays of physical prowess. For spies, they were also a golden opportunity to gather intelligence, spread misinformation, or even sabotage rivals. These competitions, often seen as sacred and neutral ground, became unexpected battlegrounds for covert operations. Take the Roman Empire, for example. While they admired Greek athletic achievements, they also saw the potential for espionage. Roman spies would infiltrate Greek training camps under the guise of spectators or even athletes themselves. Their goal: to learn the training techniques, strategies, and weaknesses of their rivals. Sometimes they went further, sabotaging equipment, spreading rumors to sow discord, or even bribing officials to influence outcomes. These acts weren't just about gaining an edge in sports. They were part of a larger strategy to undermine Greek morale and assert Roman dominance. The ancient Olympics, with their mix of politics, religion, and competition, provided the perfect cover for such activities. Athletes and spectators from across the Mediterranean world gathered in one place, creating a melting pot of cultures and opportunities for spies to blend in. It's a reminder that even in moments of celebration and unity, the shadow of espionage was never far away. But the influence of spies didn't stop at the games. Their tactics extended into the very structures that hosted these events. Ancient architecture, from secret passageways hidden beneath stadiums to cleverly designed spaces that allowed eavesdropping, the buildings themselves became tools of espionage. And that's where we're headed next, exploring how spies used architecture to their advantage, turning walls and corridors into instruments of secrecy and surveillance. Imagine standing at the base of the towering walls of Babylon, one of the most formidable fortifications of the ancient world. Built to withstand almost any assault, these walls were a marvel of engineering, thick, towering, and seemingly impenetrable. Yet, even the strongest defenses had vulnerabilities, and it was often the cunning minds of spies, armed with intimate knowledge of architecture, who found and exploited them. This is where espionage and ancient engineering collide in a fascinating dance of strategy and sabotage. In the ancient world, spies weren't just masters of disguise or deception. They were often experts in the very structures they sought to infiltrate. They understood how buildings were designed, where their weak points lay, and how to manipulate them to their advantage. Take, for example, the legendary walls of Babylon. While they were a symbol of power and resilience, spies discovered that their strength could be bypassed through careful observation and ingenuity. By studying the wall's construction, they identified areas where the mortar was weaker or where drainage systems could be exploited. This knowledge allowed them to create breaches or smuggle information in and out of the city undetected. But it wasn't just about finding weaknesses. Espionage in ancient architecture often involved a deeper understanding of how structures functioned. Spies might pose as laborers or architects to gain access to blueprints or construction sites. They could then use this information to plan sabotage, such as weakening key supports or creating hidden passages for infiltration. In some cases, they even influenced the design of enemy fortifications, subtly introducing flaws that could later be exploited during a siege. The walls of Babylon are just one example of how espionage shaped the fate of ancient civilizations. Across the ancient world, from the fortified cities of Mesopotamia to the sprawling strongholds of Egypt and Greece, spies played a critical role in both the defense and downfall of empires. Their ability to blend into the background, gather intelligence, and act on it made them invaluable assets in times of war and peace. As we reflect on these ancient tactics, it's impossible not to see their echoes in modern espionage. The principles of understanding, exploiting, and manipulating structures, whether physical or metaphorical, remain as relevant today as they were thousands of years ago. The legacy of these ancient spies is a testament to the enduring power of knowledge, strategy, and adaptability in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. The art of espionage, as it was practiced thousands of years ago, might seem like a relic of the past, a dusty scroll or a whispered secret long forgotten. But the truth is, the techniques and principles of ancient spies have left an indelible mark on the way modern intelligence operates. Think about it. The same strategies used by Sun Tzu in ancient China or the cunning disguises employed by Roman spies are still being adapted and refined by agencies like the CIA today. The legacy of ancient espionage isn't just a historical curiosity, it's a living, breathing influence on how secrets are kept and uncovered in our world. Take the concept of disguise, for example. In ancient times, spies would don false identities to infiltrate enemy camps, blending seamlessly into their surroundings. Fast forward to the Cold War, and you'll find CIA operatives using similar tactics to move undetected through hostile territories. The tools may have evolved. Modern disguises might include high-tech prosthetics or digital false identities, but the core idea remains the same: to become someone else, if only for a moment, in service of a greater mission. It's a reminder that human ingenuity, even in the face of advancing technology, often circles back to timeless strategies, and it's not just about disguises. The psychological warfare employed by ancient spies, manipulating trust, sowing discord, or spreading misinformation, has found its way into modern intelligence playbooks. The CIA, for instance, has drawn inspiration from Sun Tzu's art of war, particularly his emphasis on knowing your enemy and using deception to gain the upper hand. These aren't just dusty maxims, they're practical tools that continue to shape how intelligence agencies operate in an increasingly complex global landscape. What's fascinating is how these ancient principles have been adapted to fit the modern world. Where once a spy might have relied on a forged letter or a hidden dagger, today's operatives use encrypted messages and cyber tools. Yet, at their core, these methods still rely on the same foundational ideas: secrecy, adaptability, and the ability to outthink your opponent. It's a testament to the enduring power of ancient wisdom, and a reminder that, even in our high-tech age, the human element of espionage remains as crucial as ever. As we reflect on the legacy of ancient espionage, it's impossible not to marvel at how these early techniques have stood the test of time. They remind us that while the tools of the trade may change, the art of outsmarting an adversary is a skill as old as civilization itself. And in a world where information is more valuable than ever, the lessons of the past continue to light the way forward. Throughout history, the art of disguise has been more than just a tool for survival. It has been a weapon, a shield, and a silent force that shaped empires, toppled governments, and rewrote the course of human events. From the earliest days of ancient spies blending into enemy camps to the elaborate masquerades of Renaissance courts, the ability to hide in plain sight has proven to be one of humanity's most powerful tools. It's not just about changing clothes or adopting a new name. It's about becoming someone else entirely, slipping into the shadows to gather secrets, protect identities, or even alter the fate of nations. Disguise has always been a double-edged sword. On one hand, it's been a means of survival, allowing individuals to escape danger or infiltrate hostile territories. On the other, it's been a tool of manipulation, used to deceive, spy, and control. Whether it was the cunning agents of ancient China's warring states period, the shadowy operatives of the Roman Empire, or the covert networks of medieval Europe, the art of disguise has left an indelible mark on history. These techniques didn't just vanish with the passage of time, they evolved, influencing modern espionage, undercover operations, and even the way we think about identity and anonymity today. But what's truly remarkable is how this ancient practice continues to resonate in our modern world. The same principles that once allowed spies to vanish into the crowd now shape the way we think about privacy, security, and the masks we all wear in our daily lives. From the digital disguises of online anonymity to the subtle art of blending into a crowd, the legacy of ancient espionage is everywhere, if you know where to look. So, as we reflect on this fascinating history, it's worth asking, what secrets might still be hidden in plain sight? What stories remain untold, waiting to be uncovered by those with the curiosity to see beyond the surface? The art of disguise reminds us that truth is often cloaked in layers, and the world is full of mysteries waiting to be unraveled. If you've enjoyed this journey into the shadows of history, don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think is the most intriguing example of disguise in history? And for more tales of intrigue, espionage, and the secrets that shaped our world, hit that subscribe button and join us as we continue to explore the hidden corners of history. Until next time, keep your eyes open. You never know what might be hiding in plain sight.